Okay, so I already put the list of all the ten levels of prisoners in a order of hierarchy from what I think is the most dangerous to the least dangerous. And then I already put the description of each next to them. So the gangbanger, I believe, is probably the most dangerous because from what I've seen with the documentaries, with all the gangs members who's already in prison still kill people, still have influence in the prisons, and probably the uh highest picking order from what I believe in prisons themselves. And then the mean dude, which I believe is probably the second because just being that they're violent and just wanting to be that different person to be already always be solitary confinement, knowing that they're going to be in prison for a very long time anyway, that they're just the most violent and dangerous people that they want to be. And then the head honest, I believe, are probably the third because just the way it's the way their description which they live around the limited pleasures available within the confines of prisons, smuggling contraband, uh, doing homosexual activities, gambling, drug running, and other officially condemned activities provided the center of interest for prison hedonists, which to me just sounds pretty bad in itself because they know that it's illegal to be doing what they're doing and they still do it. And a lot of the stuff that they do, which like smuggling contraband or illegal drugs, which they can do for the higher order of the prisons themselves, they do it for. Uh, Most people usually do get caught, but when they don't, uh, their their activity just increases more and more. And some illegal contraband can, uh, most people think of like maybe drugs, but it could be food, it could be maybe doing certain things like tattooing, which is, you know, contraband in itself because they're using sharp objects to draw on other inmates. And then the opportunists take advantages of positive experience that the president offers, which, they're, they know that they're going to be in prison for a long time, so they thought that maybe since they didn't get a time to go to school or understanding the world that they're missing, that they're going to use that opportunity that the prisons sometimes provide for certain some inmates, um, to give them something of like a second life, second chance. Maybe when they get out, they'll have somewhat of an understanding uh, to be back outside of the world from the prisons. And then the retreatist, retreatist, the prison life is rigorous and demanding. So what they do is I guess some prisoners are able to be psychologically uh, treated by going to retreats and to get them from not thinking of the imprisonment and the hard times that they're going through in prison themselves, um, by either the staff of the prisons or just by the inmates themselves, and it gives them something to maybe look forward to every now and then to get their psychological scars that they're having to go through in prisons, and to basically, get them to just not even think about what they're going through now. And then the legalists, they are basically convicts that are facing long sentences, and so that what they do is try to uh, fight the system in a way that they could either get less time or, maybe even uh, to be released even earlier than they were sentenced for. And if they had life, but they tried to fight for it to get at least maybe 20 years, 30 years instead, which, that's what they will basically try to do. And then the radical inmates view themselves as political prisoners. They see that society and the successful conformists who could populate it as oppressors who force criminality on many good people through the creation of a system that distributes wealth and power inequitably, inequitably. What I see that the radical believes is that those who basically aren't really uh, they think themselves as the good people in prisons, and that they have nothing else to do but to basically uh, spew hate towards the people that put them in there, put them in that prison themselves. And so he basically has the pure negatives, and just uh, what I see is they he hates the community, he hates the life that basically made that put him there in the first place. And so what they do is basically uh, spew their political beliefs, which somewhat, it's pretty much hating like everything that's happened to him, and to basically spew that hate towards the community of like around them. And then the colonizer, these are probably the most common people that I've seen or heard or watched even documentaries or videos of, which inmates think that the prisons are their home and they don't really look forward to leaving. They know the ropes. Many have friends inside, and they feel more comfortable in prisons themselves. And so what I see a lot of people are people who's gone through drug problems, or they are drug addicts, or they sell drugs themselves. And what they do is a lot of them have been in prison or in jail many times, and so they think that they feel like maybe to change them themselves from what were doing, they basically wanting to stay in prison or in jail to basically not do what they do. And because they know the ropes around the jails or prisons, they have a lot of friends. uh, they call them friends, but they're basically people who either have the same understanding, or they've done what they've done, and so they get along somewhat. But you don't really have friends in prisons, especially not with people who uh, most of them are in jail or prison for a lot of different things. The religious, some, I guess, prisoners confess to certain religious faiths. A lot of them are pretty strong. Most could be between Muslims and Christians, but when you get higher into the order, they get closer to like kind of like the sketchy side, which are like the Satanists or the witches, or they believe in witches. Uh, I guess some religious inmates actually frequently ask uh, services from the facilities to create certain diets. I guess I know some Muslims can't eat certain foods, and so what they do is they ask their kitchen or their officers to ask for a certain type of like diet to kind of get them going with what they believe in. And so the opportunists there, they take advantage of the positive experience the prison has to offer. Schooling, trade training, counseling, and other improvement activities are the focal points of the opportunist life at prison. So they know that they've been in jail, so they know that they want to take advantage of what they need. So when they get out, they have some understanding of like how to get around uh, their community in a best way possible. They believe that they probably believe that what they did was wrong, and so they want to make it up to the community when he gets out. That that he's been training, he's been doing counseling, he's been going to school in prison or jail to get by himself. So the realists, they seem confident as a natural consequences of criminal activity as an unfortunate cost doing business. This stoic attitude toward incarceration generally leads to realists to pull his or her own time and make the best of it. I feel like this is probably one of the lowest in the pecking order because they know that they did uh, something wrong and that they're in jail for what they did, and you know they know they deserve, in a sense, that they need to be in there either for a few years or maybe 20 years, but they understand that they did something wrong, and so they know that they shouldn't do even more heinous crimes in prison because they know that they could either add times or go to a heavier sentencing, and even worse, go to prisons that are even worse. They're the prisons of the community is probably even worse in there, and so they probably don't look forward to that. And what they do is basically have that attitude of uh, they know what they did, they know that they can do better, and so most people who are realists who comes out of the prisons or jails, they basically turn their life around in another way, so they don't have to go through that same problem. And so what I believe is that the highest ranking in that pecking order is probably between the gangbanger and the mean dude. I believe the gangbanger is probably one of the highest itself because just because of how violent they all have tattoos to you know to describe to put a description of each other to understand who's in what gang and the other. And some gang fights actually happen in prisons, which uh, most get slashes through the neck. Many die or even raped in prisons by these people, and so I believe these are probably one of the worst kind of people in prisons. And a lot of the influence, a lot of the community, the the community flow of the prison itself is depending on the gangbangers themselves. And usually there's not even just one type of gang, there's more than one, which makes it even worse because a lot of gang fights do happen, and many of the gang fights that happen in prisons lead to either a death or a lot of injuries. And then I'd say one of the lowest, if not the lowest, are the people who see themselves as that it's a natural consequences and that they know what they did was wrong. And so what they do is use the opportunity of the prisons or jails themselves to, when they get out of jail, they change their life around and make their life the best as they can, so they don't have to do the same. They don't have to go to jail or prisons again. Having to go through what they went through in jail or prisons.